My boyfriend of 6 years refused to marry me and humiliated me in front of his family. Stay with me till the end, because what happened after will leave you shocked. And if this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Talia Monroe never thought her love story would turn into a lesson in heartbreak. At 28, she had built her life around being a nurse in Atlanta, someone who cared for others not just at work, but in her personal life too. She was the type of woman who always showed up, on time, with love, with loyalty. And for 6 years, she had poured that loyalty into one man, Khalil Warren. Khalil was 30, polished, and ambitious. He worked in finance and came from a wealthy family that valued appearances more than anything else. From the outside, he looked like the dream, tall, confident, successful. But for Talia, it wasn't the suits or the cars that drew her in. It was the boy she met back in college, when neither of them had much to their names except late-night talks and big dreams. Through the years, Talia gave up more than she admitted. She passed on travel nursing jobs because Khalil said long distance would ruin them. She covered bills when he was between jobs, even dipping into her savings. She stayed steady while he climbed, believing his promises that their time would come. Marriage, he would say with a smirk, was right around the corner. And Talia believed him, because 6 years of love should count for something. But lately, she noticed how the conversations shifted. Whenever she hinted at marriage, Khalil brushed it off with jokes or changed the subject. "You know I'm focused on my career," he'd say. "Let's just enjoy what we have." Talia tried to be patient, telling herself he just needed more time. After all, she had already invested 6 years. What was a little longer? Yet deep down, her heart ached. She watched her friends settle down, some already with children, while she kept waiting for a man who seemed to hold the power of her future in his hands. Still, she clung to the hope that Khalil would see her worth. That the sacrifices she made, late nights working overtime, endless encouragement, believing in him even when no one else did, would lead to a ring and a promise. She didn't know yet that the story she thought she was living, the story of patience rewarded, was about to twist into something cruel. What she expected to be the happiest moment of her life would soon become the memory that shattered her trust and lit the fire for a revenge she never thought she had in her. Because Khalil Warren wasn't planning to make her his wife. He was preparing to break her heart in the most humiliating way possible. The night of Khalil's parents' anniversary dinner, Talia felt a mix of nerves and excitement. She stood in front of the mirror for almost an hour, carefully choosing her dress, fixing her curls, and telling herself over and over that this was going to be the night. 6 years of love, patience, and sacrifice would finally mean something. She was certain Khalil would propose. Why else would he insist she come to such a formal dinner, surrounded by his entire family? When they arrived at the Warren estate, Talia felt out of place almost immediately. The mansion glowed with chandeliers, soft music played in the background, and every guest seemed to drip with wealth and confidence. She smiled politely, trying to blend in, but she could feel the stares. Some were curious, some judgmental. Khalil's family had never hidden their disapproval. To them, she was just a nurse from a middle-class family, not the type of woman who belonged in their circle. Patrice Warren, Khalil's mother, greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Talia, you look simple tonight," she said, her tone sugar-coated but sharp. Talia forced a smile and thanked her anyway, swallowing the sting. Ronald, his father, gave a nod of acknowledgement, but quickly moved on to a conversation about stocks with another guest, leaving Talia standing awkwardly. Dinner was served, and the long table filled with laughter and wine. Talia sat beside Khalil, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her heart pounding. This was it, she thought. He would make his big gesture in front of everyone. The thought made her chest swell with anticipation. She pictured the small gasp she'd let out when he pulled out a ring, the way the family would finally have to accept her once they saw how serious Khalil was about their love. Halfway through the meal, Patrice turned her sharp gaze to them. "So, Khalil," she said smoothly, "when should we expect wedding bells? It's been, 6 years now?" The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to Khalil. Talia felt her cheeks warm, a smile spreading across her face as she waited for him to finally say the words. But instead of reaching for her hand or standing up proudly, Khalil leaned back in his chair, laughed, and shook his head. "Marriage?" he said, smirking. "Talia knows she's not wife material." The words hit her like a slap across the face. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then the laughter began, first a chuckle from Ronald, then a giggle from Patrice, and soon the whole table joined in. Talia sat frozen, her her smile shattering as her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Her heart pounded so loudly she barely heard the rest of the conversation. Khalil went on talking, dismissing her as though she were nothing but a passing fling. The man she had loved and supported for 6 years had just torn her dignity apart in front of everyone. In that moment, Talia realized she was alone at that table, surrounded by people who didn't respect her, sitting beside a man who never truly valued her. Talia sat there, her hands trembling under the table, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. The laughter still rang in her ears like an echo that wouldn't stop. She could feel her chest tighten with humiliation, every second at that table dragging her further into a nightmare she never thought she would live through. Without saying a word, she quietly placed her napkin down, pushed her chair back, and stood up. Nobody at the table stopped her. Not even Khalil. She walked out of the dining room, out of the mansion, and into the cool night air. Her heels clicked against the stone pathway as she tried to catch her breath, her vision blurry. She had expected love, a proposal, a future. Instead, she got humiliation. She stopped near the driveway, clutching her purse against her chest as the first tear finally slipped down her cheek. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Khalil's voice followed, sharp and careless. "Talia, wait up. What's your problem?" She turned to face him, her face wet, her voice shaking. "What's my problem? You just humiliated me in front of your entire family. You laughed at me, Khalil. After everything I've given you." He rolled his eyes and let out a dry laugh. "You're overreacting. You take everything so seriously." Talia stared at him, shocked at how casual he sounded, as if her pain meant nothing. "Overreacting? I've been by your side for 6 years. 6 years, Khalil. I supported you when you had nothing. I helped pay your bills. I stayed up with you when you thought you'd fail. And tonight, you make a joke out of me?" Khalil stepped closer, his tone colder now. "If you were the one, I'd have married you already. Don't you get it? You're not it for me. You're convenient. Comfortable. But wife material? No, that's not you." The words pierced her deeper than anything he had ever said. She staggered back slightly, pressing her hand to her chest as if she could hold herself together. Convenient. Comfortable. That's all she was to him after 6 years of sacrifice. Memories flashed in her mind like cruel reminders. The time she lent him her savings to cover his rent. The time she turned down the travel nurse program in New York because he begged her to stay close. The countless birthdays she spent with his family while he never once made the effort with hers. She had carried him through storms, only for him to throw her aside like she was nothing. Her tears began to dry, replaced by something else. Something stronger. Anger burned in her chest, pushing out the ache. For the first time, she saw him clearly, not as the man she loved, but as the selfish, arrogant person he truly was. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and said nothing more. She simply turned away, walked to her car, and drove off. As the city lights blurred past her, one thought echoed in her mind. He thought she was weak. But he was about to learn just how wrong he was. For days after the dinner, Talia moved like a ghost through her own life. At the hospital, she forced a smile for patients, hid her swollen eyes behind makeup, and told her coworkers she was just tired. At home, she stared at the walls of her apartment, replaying Khalil's cruel words over and over. "You're not wife material." She wanted to believe it had been a mistake, a slip of the tongue, something he would apologize for once he realized how deeply he had cut her. But the apology never came. Instead, Khalil acted as though nothing had happened. He sent her casual texts asking if she wanted to grab dinner or come over. When she didn't respond quickly enough, he called, his voice smooth but dismissive. "You're still sulking? Come on, Talia. It wasn't that serious. You're tougher than that. Not that serious." The words hit her like salt in an open wound. 6 years of devotion, brushed aside as if her heartbreak was just a mood she would get over. He truly expected her to swallow her pride and fall back into place, as if nothing had happened. Then came the phone call that cracked everything open. A close friend from the hospital, who knew one of Khalil's co-workers, hesitated before telling her. "Talia, I think you need to know. Khalil's been seen around town with someone new. A girl from his office. Her name's Sierra. Sierra Vaughn." The name lodged in Talia's chest like a stone. She didn't want to believe it, not until she saw it herself. So one evening, when Khalil claimed he was working late, she drove to the downtown restaurant near his office. And there he was, sitting across from a woman with sleek hair and a bright smile, his hand brushing against hers on the table. Talia's breath caught in her throat. She sat frozen in her car, watching them laugh together through the window. Sierra looked genuine, unaware of the game Khalil was playing. It hit Talia like lightning. The humiliation at the dinner, the cold dismissal afterward, all of it had been to clear space for Sierra. He wasn't confused. He wasn't hesitant. He was done with her, and he hadn't even had the decency to admit it. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. A flood of memories rushed in again. The rent she helped him pay, the nights she stayed awake encouraging him through his failures, the dreams she had put on hold for him. And now he thought he could discard her like nothing, trading her in for someone new, without consequence. Her tears dried in that moment. The heartbreak hardened into resolve. She whispered into the silence of her car, her voice steady, almost frighteningly calm. He thinks I'm weak. He's about to learn different. For the first time in weeks, Talia felt alive. Not because of him, but because she knew what came next. It wasn't going to be forgiveness. It was going to be fire. Talia didn't explode the moment she found out. She knew anger could be loud and short. She wanted something quieter and more certain. For a week she moved like someone learning a new script, trading scenes of despair for small, steady actions. She picked up extra shifts at the hospital, saying yes to overtime that left her tired, but also filling a savings account she had kept dormant for emergencies. Every tip, every extra hour, every dollar saved felt like a small victory reclaimed from 6 years of giving. She started cleaning up the loose ends of her life. She changed passwords, updated her resume, and made real plans for the travel nurse program she'd once given up. She set up a separate bank account under a different app and began funneling money there, imagining the places she would go and the freedom she would buy herself. The practical work calmed her. Focus replaced the dizzy ache. And the more she did, the less she wanted him in her thoughts. Khalil tried to undo her retreat with messages that slipped between apology and entitlement. "Come over tonight," he texted. "We can talk." "Don't be dramatic," he said another afternoon. She replied with short, measured answers and let most calls go to voicemail. She would not give him the emotional bait he wanted. Breadcrumbs stopped working when she refused to chase them. Beyond the money and the emotional distance, she began to study him like a case file. She remembered small things that now looked like clues. The way he always boasted about which clients he had, how he left sensitive papers on the kitchen counter, how his pride lived in his shoes, his car, his LinkedIn endorsements. He trusted appearances. She planned to use that trust against him. She wrote notes in a small notebook, dates, conversations, the nights she covered his rent, the transfers she made when he said he had an emergency. Those entries felt like proof of investment, a ledger of what she had given and what he had taken. She also watched Sierra from afar, learning her patterns on social media and noticing how quickly Sierra accepted Khalil's version of the world. The new girl was polite and bright, but she didn't know Khalil's habits or his family's taste for performance. Sierra was vulnerable to evidence, and evidence is what Talia had begun to gather. Revenge, for Talia, was not about public spectacle at first. It was about rebuilding and positioning, saving money, gaining distance, and collecting proof that could not be dismissed as sour bitterness. Each action was deliberate. Each saved dollar, each recorded message, each careful text reply tightened the map she was drawing to dismantle the life that had discarded her. When the plan was sketched and the safe accounts were full, she finally whispered to herself, steady and cold, "He thinks I'm weak. Soon he will regret ever treating me like something disposable and truly meaningless." This was only the beginning of what she would do. The night of the company gala, Talia walked into the grand ballroom dressed in a deep emerald gown that caught the light with every step. Her hair was swept back, her posture tall, her face calm. She looked nothing like the broken woman who had left Khalil's family dinner in tears. Tonight, she wasn't here to blend in or to wait for anyone's approval. She was here on her own terms, and she wanted him to see it. Khalil spotted her the moment she entered. His eyes widened just slightly before he forced a confident smirk back onto his face. He hadn't expected her to show up, not at an event where his colleagues and bosses mingled freely. Talia offered him only a polite nod before slipping easily into conversations with people he worked with. She knew many of them by name, remembered their stories from the times Khalil bragged about office gossip. She used that knowledge to her advantage. As she laughed and chatted, she dropped small, careful hints. "Khalil and I always joked about how much time he spends here. It's been 6 years of late nights," she said lightly to one executive. To another she remarked, "Funny how he told me he never dates coworkers." Guess things change. Each comment was casual, wrapped in a smile, but planted like a seed. She didn't have to push hard. People whispered when inconsistencies surfaced, and by the end of the evening, she could see the subtle glances thrown his way, the raised brows, the murmurs when he walked past. Khalil was still smiling, but tension rippled across his face. He knew something was unraveling, though he couldn't put his finger on it yet. Later that night, once she was home, Talia sat at her desk with her phone and laptop open. Years of texts, photos, shared bills, and vacation receipts piled up before her. Proof of a relationship that wasn't just casual, it was deep, real, undeniable. She organized everything into a clean file and attached it to a simple message. She sent it to Sierra. No long explanation, no insult. Just the truth laid out clearly. Screenshots of messages where Khalil promised Talia a future, rent payments she made in his name, affectionate selfies from years back, and bills addressed to them both. At the bottom, she added one line. "This is the man you think you know." Hours later, Sierra replied. The words were short but heavy. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Thank you for showing me." Talia leaned back in her chair, her chest tightening not with pain this time, but with the weight of power shifting. Sierra wasn't her enemy. She was just another woman deceived by Khalil's lies. Now Sierra knew the truth, and the truth was the one thing Khalil couldn't bury under his charm. The rumors at work had already begun, and now Sierra's disillusionment would spread the fire further. Talia didn't need to scream or fight. She had set everything in motion quietly, and Khalil was about to feel the walls close in. The following week, Khalil's firm hosted a networking event at one of the city's upscale rooftop lounges. It was supposed to be his moment to shine. He had just closed a deal, and everyone expected him to be the charming star of the evening. He arrived in his tailored suit, flashing that same confident smile he always wore, unaware that the night would not unfold in his favor. Sierra was already there. She looked composed, but her eyes carried a sharpness Khalil hadn't noticed before. When he approached her with his usual smoothness, she didn't smile back. Instead, she pulled her phone from her clutch and held it out to him. "Care to explain this?" she said loudly enough that heads turned. On her screen were screenshots, messages between him and Talia spanning years, photos of them together, receipts with both their names. Khalil's confident grin faltered, his jaw tightening. He tried to lower his voice, hissing, "Not here, Sierra. Let's talk about this later." But Sierra wasn't interested in saving his face. "No," she snapped, her voice rising. "You told me I was the only one. You said your last relationship was over years ago. 6 years, Khalil? You let me walk around thinking I was special while you had someone else covering your rent and supporting you? Do you have any idea how pathetic that makes you look?" The room went silent, conversations halting as his coworkers, superiors, and clients turned to watch the scene unfold. A few tried to look away, but the tension in the air was magnetic. Whispers spread quickly, and Khalil's carefully built image of integrity and ambition cracked right there under the weight of Sierra's anger. He tried to reach for her arm to calm her, but Sierra pulled away. "Don't touch me. I'm done." She turned and left, leaving him standing alone in a crowd that was no longer admiring him but questioning him. By the time he left the event, his phone was already buzzing with calls from concerned colleagues and texts asking if what Sierra said was true. Furious and desperate, he scrolled to Talia's number and called. When she answered, her voice was calm, almost too calm. "What do you want, Khalil?" "You think you're clever?" he spat. "You set me up. Do you know what you've done to my reputation? People are looking at me like I'm a liar because of you. Do you think this makes you look better?" Talia listened quietly, her lips curling into the faintest smile. Then she replied, her words cutting through his rage with steady precision. "I didn't ruin your life, Khalil. You ruined your own when you thought I was disposable. Everything falling apart now? That's on you." Before he could respond, she ended the call. Then, with a deep breath, she blocked his number completely. For the first time in 6 years, she felt free, untangled from his lies, no longer chained to the man who never valued her. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peace. Talia almost didn't accept Danica's invitation. A part of her wanted to avoid the family altogether, to never look back. But another part of her, the part that had endured 6 years of loyalty only to be discarded like nothing, knew this was her moment. If Khalil had been bold enough to humiliate her in front of his family, then it was only fitting that his truth be unmasked in the same space. The evening of the gathering, Talia walked in with her head held high. She wore a sleek navy dress that accentuated her confidence, her curls pinned up elegantly, and a quiet smile playing on her lips. Danica greeted her warmly at the door, whispering, "I'm so glad you came. You deserve to be seen for who you really are." Inside, the Warren household buzzed with laughter and chatter. Khalil wasn't there yet, but his parents, cousins, and a few close family friends filled the living room. Eyes turned toward Talia, surprised but curious. After all, she had been a familiar presence for years, cooking during holidays, supporting Khalil through school, showing up for birthdays. And then suddenly she vanished. "Wow, Talia," Mrs. Warren said, her tone clipped but cordial. "It's been a long time. We thought you moved on." Talia smiled politely. "I did move on, but not in the way you might think." A hush fell over the room. Danica, sitting nearby, gave her a small nod of encouragement. One of Khalil's uncles chuckled lightly. "So what happened, dear? You used to be like part of the family." Talia drew in a slow breath, steadying her voice. "I was for 6 years, until Khalil decided I wasn't good enough. He introduced me to all of you as his friend, while secretly planning a future with someone else. I found out the truth at his birthday dinner. That was the night I stopped being part of this family." Gasps rippled through the gathering. Mrs. Warren's smile faltered. Mr. Warren's brows furrowed. Talia's voice didn't shake. It carried with quiet precision. 6 years of my life, my money, my energy. I supported him when he was broke. I stood by him when no one else would. And when he thought he had leveled up, he discarded me like trash. He made sure to humiliate me in front of all of you, as if I was never anything. The room erupted in whispers. Some faces looked shocked, others uncomfortable. Danica's eyes gleamed with both pride and vindication. Finally, someone was holding her brother accountable. At that very moment, Khalil walked in, his usual cocky swagger on display. But the silence that greeted him was thick, suffocating. His mother's eyes burned with shame, his father's jaw clenched with disappointment. "Talia," Mrs. Warren said softly, I had no idea." "That's because Khalil made sure you didn't," Talia replied evenly. "But now you know." Khalil's golden boy image cracked before everyone's eyes. And Talia, radiant and unbothered, picked up her purse and excused herself, leaving behind a stunned family drowning in the truth. Khalil's downfall began like a slow leak in a sinking ship. At first, he tried to brush off the confrontation with Sierra, thinking he could charm her back into his orbit. But Sierra wasn't like Talia. She didn't carry wounds quietly. She stormed out of his apartment with her suitcase, screaming for the neighbors to hear. "You lied to me. You played me. You're nothing but a fraud." The door slammed behind her, and with it, the illusion of control he had once enjoyed. At work, the damage spread like wildfire. Colleagues who once shook his hand with respect now whispered behind coffee mugs and sent knowing glances during meetings. He overheard one of them mutter, "That's the guy who led 2 women on for years." His credibility cracked, and soon, even the projects he spearheaded were reassigned to others. The golden boy of the office became a cautionary tale overnight. Home wasn't any better. His parents, once proud of his polished image, now looked at him with quiet disappointment. His mother barely spoke to him, while his father's words cut sharper than any rumor. "You embarrassed this family. All because you couldn't be honest." Even Danica, who had tried to support him in the past, gave him no comfort. "You had someone who loved you, Khalil," she said flatly. "And you treated her like nothing. Don't expect sympathy from me." The walls closed in, and the only person his mind circled back to was Talia. The one who had stood beside him when his bank account was empty. The one who had carried the weight of his bills without complaint. The one who, despite everything, had believed in his dreams. He replayed every memory of her, but this time, through the lens of regret. One rainy evening, driven by desperation, Khalil showed up at Talia's doorstep. His once sharp suit was wrinkled, his eyes red from sleepless nights. She opened the door just a crack, but he immediately dropped to his knees on the wet concrete. "Talia, please," he begged, his voice trembling. "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I should have married you. I should have never doubted you. Give me another chance. I'll do anything. I'll marry you tomorrow if that's what you want. Just, please, don't leave me like this." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Talia looked at the man she had once loved, and instead of longing, she felt only clarity. Her voice was calm but firm. "Khalil, I wasted 6 years waiting for you to see my worth. 6 years of building you up while you tore me down. I will never spend another second begging you to choose me. His face crumpled as tears streamed down. "Please, Talia." But she shook her head slowly. "Never again." And with that, she closed the door, leaving him kneeling in the rain, powerless, broken, and finally alone with the consequences of his own choices. Talia packed her last box with a quiet smile, sealing it with more peace than she'd felt in years. The apartment that had once been filled with late-night arguments and shattered promises was behind her now. In her hand was the acceptance letter for the travel nurse program she had once turned down for Khalil. Back then, she had thought love meant sacrifice, choosing his future over hers. Now, she finally understood that love shouldn't require burying your own dreams. The first stop was Chicago. The city's energy hit her the moment she stepped out of the cab. Tall buildings, busy streets, and a hum of life that promised new beginnings. At the hospital orientation, she met other nurses with stories like hers, people who had left behind toxic relationships, dead-end jobs, or towns that didn't fit them anymore. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. Her workdays were long but fulfilling. Each shift reminded her of why she became a nurse in the first place. Not just to heal others, but to heal herself through purpose. She spent evenings exploring the city, walking along the river, trying new foods, and learning to laugh without waiting for someone else's approval. The version of Talia who had once begged for scraps of love from Khalil was gone. This Talia was whole on her own. Sometimes, in the quiet of her new apartment, she thought about him. She wondered if he was still chasing validation in the same shallow circles that once mocked her. But the thought no longer hurt. It was like recalling a bad dream, distant, blurry, no longer powerful. She didn't need to check social media to know he was unraveling. She had already seen the cracks. And whether he picked himself up or stayed down wasn't her burden anymore. One evening, sitting by her window with the city lights glowing beneath her, she finally allowed herself to reflect on everything. Revenge had started as the fuel that got her moving, but it wasn't really about destroying Khalil. It was about breaking free from the cage he had built around her confidence. She realized that the sweetest revenge wasn't his downfall. It was her freedom, her growth, and her happiness without him. Looking back, she wished she hadn't waited 6 years for him to see her worth. She wished she had walked away the first time he laughed at her dreams, or the second time he dismissed her pain, or the countless times he made her feel small. But regret didn't weigh her down anymore. It pushed her forward. If someone shows you they don't value you, she thought, speaking softly to herself as if sending the words out into the world, don't waste years trying to prove them wrong. Walk away sooner. Your future deserves better than waiting. With that, she closed her journal, set it aside, and smiled at the skyline. For the first time in forever, her story wasn't about him. It was about her. And she was just getting started. Do you think Talia made the right choice by walking away from Khalil for good? Or should she have given him another chance after everything? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you think. And if you enjoy stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next.